The meeting will come to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Iannarino?
Here.
Order. Kane?
Here.
Khan?
Here.
Smolka?
Here.
Shupride?
Here.
Wayne?
Here.
Do we dial?
I'm coming to dial him, yeah.
I'll keep going. The mission statement of School District 15 is to produce world-class leaders by building a connected learning community. Dr. Thompson?
This evening we're being led in pledge by students that participated in the YEA program, and I'm going to ask Dr. Barbini to come up and introduce the folks that are going to lead us in the pledge and the program.
Good evening, Dr. Thompson, Board President Chupai, and members of the board. It's great to be here on this rainy evening to have Mr. Steve Gauss, the Executive Director of the Palatine Area Chamber of Commerce and a friend of District 15, present and actually lead the pledge with several students who he led in the YEA, Young Entrepreneurs Academy program throughout the entirety of the 16-17 school year. So, Steve, why don't you take it away?
All right. You ready? Pledge allegiance
to the flag. Nice.
Are you ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We live, work, and play in a global knowledge economy. And it requires of us, whether we are grown-ups in the workforce or students preparing for the workforce, to have several essential skills. These skills include, but are not limited to, the ability to think critically and solve problems, the ability to take initiative, to access and analyze information, and demonstrate high levels of written and oral proficiencies, as well as to maintain curiosity and imagination, and to be persistent, as well as the ability to take calculated risks, to tolerate failure, and to be resilient. Now, providing opportunities for students to develop and master these essential skills for the global knowledge economy that we live, work, and play in is a shared responsibility. It begins at home, first with the parents, and then it extends from the parents in the household to the public schools, and then above and beyond that, to community partnerships. One such partner that I recognized, Mr. Steve Gauss, Executive Director of the Palatine Area Chamber of Commerce. I won't say that more than once fast, Steve. But that is a very important partnership that works alongside of our families and our schools to really help students develop and master these skills. And so tonight, Steve is going to provide you, the Board of Education and the larger District 15 community, with an overview of the YEA program, the Young Entrepreneurs Academy program. And you're also going to meet several of the students who participated in this exceptional year-long program. These students that are here before you tonight and those that couldn't join us because they had other commitments on this rainy evening, they're not only sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and students, but they are innovators. They are business owners, and they will shape the future by relentlessly pursuing what's made this nation so special in terms of the American dream. And so, Steve, our partner and friend, I'd like to thank you for making this possible. I'm just a person talking right now. You took the talk and you made it walk. So, Steve, thank you so much for everything you do as a partner.
Thank you, sir.
All right, here you go.
Thank you. I appreciate the partnership of Matt Barbini and all that the school district does to put on this remarkable program. And with me tonight, I have 12, I believe it's 12, of our local CEOs. And that's really what the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, or YEA, is all about. It's you begin as a student, you finish as a CEO. It's a fun class that guides our middle school students through process of starting their own real business or nonprofit organization. It teaches them how to make a job, not just take a job. The students learn as much about self-esteem, personal potential, and leadership skills as they do about budgeting, planning, production, and they have the opportunity to work with and learn from local business leaders here in the Palatine community. It really does take a community to put on the YA program. YA students do everything that an adult would do when starting a business. They go through the process of identifying their idea, their business, writing a formal business plan, and they present that plan to a live panel of investors and sponsors for their startup capital funding. So think Shark Tank. That's what these students did back in April. And they actually launched their business. From registering their DBAs to filing tax returns, YA students do everything an adult would in starting their own real business. The direct mission of YA is to help students embrace their passion, energy, creativity, talents, and launch a venture and view entrepreneurship and social innovation as synonymous with success and freedom. Throughout the course and curriculum, students receive weekly instructions on various matters relating to the process of starting and running a business. Students meet weekly for 2.5 hours for 30 weeks from October to May. So there is a lot of work involved in the class, and these students should be applauded for everything that they did, in addition to being outstanding students with all their regular schoolwork. They benefit from an array of local entrepreneurs as guest speakers who present on various entrepreneurial-related topics related to specific lessons, and then we actually go out on the field on field trips, and we meet with various businesses around the community so they can see what they've learned in class in real action. We have guest instructors, speakers, and mentors here tonight, and I wish you could all stand and be acknowledged by everyone for everything that you do with the class. So all our speakers, instructors, mentors, Nolan, also sponsors. There are a lot more people involved in this class to put on everything that's required, and it really does take the whole business community at Palatine to help put this together. So I also want to thank my co-program manager, Mike Carmody, who I don't believe is here tonight. But Mike was really my partner in helping organize things throughout the year. And I do want to recognize him. And then finally, these students. And I'd like to go down the line and have them introduce themselves and give you the name of their company, which exists and is working right now. So we'll start off. We did have a couple partnerships this year, so why don't we start off with our partnerships?
So my name is Kosei Tatsuno. I'm a Kashmir Valley. So our company is Backers.
I'm Abraham Austin, and my business is La Victoire.
I'm Paula Cara, and my business is Scent Bubble. I'm Maggie Wu, and my business is Express On. I'm Angela Ma, and my business is Brilliant Bob's Grab and Go Box.
My name is Zanko Fan, and my business is called Dumb Games.
My name is Arnav Sangamaker, and my business is Sky Games.
I'm Jolin Chu, and this is my partner.
Aditya Madali.
Our business is Zen Euro.
Hello, my name is Monish Sony, and my business is Cheeky Bars.
Thank you guys for coming out tonight and being recognized. Appreciate the board for having us and partnering with the school district on this really fun and enjoyable program, and I love our partnership, so thank you.
Lots of photo ops, ladies and gentlemen. All right, congratulations. And
Whoever created this little device is kind of fun. You push the button and it lights up. So thank you for coming tonight. The Board of Education appreciates all you do. Keep up the good work being entrepreneurs. Good job. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. Nice job. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. No. Good work. All right, the next recognition is kangaroo math, and with the recognized students is Dr. Meg Schnorr.
All right, good evening, President Shupai, Dr. Thompson, board members, and distinguished guests. It's my pleasure to introduce you to 3 of the participants in the Math Kangaroo competition who were able to join us tonight. We'll also be recognizing a couple others who weren't able to make it. Each year in March, the Math Kangaroo competition offers students an opportunity to showcase their math skills. Students are given 20 to 30 multiple choice questions and 75 minutes to solve them. This year, 28,668 students participated on March 16th, and the awards are given at both the state and the national level. If you're in 11th or 12th grade, your prizes are sent in the mail, but some of our students got to attend a ceremony for first, second, or third place in the state or the top 10 national winners. And these 3 gentlemen who are with me tonight are among those who were invited to this ceremony. 3 of our schools participated, and all 3 had students invited to collect the top honors. So, guys, when I say your name, raise your hand and let everybody know who you are, okay? So, at Central Road, Anish P., an 8th grader who was not able to be with us tonight, was first in the state and first in the nation. Now remember, this is 28,000 plus kids, so that is really impressive. Hunting Ridge, Jason L., who is a 4th grader, had first in the state and first in the nation. Ashwin M., there he is. He is a 4th grader, and he was 7th in the nation. Arav P., he's a 3rd grader and was 3rd in the state and 4th in the nation. Frank C. Whiteley had Samuel K., and Samuel is a 4th grader, and he was 8th in the nation. And also from Whiteley was Joshua L., who was not able to be with us tonight, who's a 4th grader, who earned 3rd place in the state and 4th in the nation. So very impressive indeed. So please give a round of applause for these outstanding guests.
28,000 students in here, top 10, that's great. That's amazing. Congratulations. Keep up the good work with math. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. For good work.
But inside their keys. It's awesome. Can't believe they're first in the nation.
We're going to just adjust the agenda just a bit. We are going to have a presentation by Mike Adamczyk on the 2018 tentative budget. And I wanted to let the board members know that Dave Border has joined us via telephone. He's an out of state, but he wanted to be a participant in the meeting. So, Dave, can you hear us?
I can, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Make it just takes a minute to warm up.
Well, good evening, President Shupai, Dr. Thompson, board members. Almost there.
Sorry, that's my family.
They're a nice family.
You should never apologize for your family.
It's a great picture.
We need the lights down, though, so we can see it better.
Thank you. I'd like to present the tentative budget tonight for 2017-2018 school year, which begins July 1. This is the first step in the process. There'll be a public hearing, on the budget at the September board meeting. state law, the board has to adopt the budget by September 30, so I'll ask the board to adopt the budget at the September regular meeting of the Board of Education. So again, this is the first step in the process. And we all talk about budgets, so I just thought, what is a budget? I've really never looked it up in a dictionary myself before tonight, or before preparing for this. Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it's a statement of financial position of an administration for a definite period of time based on estimates, I italicized estimates, of expenditures during the period and proposals for financing them. Cambridge Dictionary defines it as a financial plan that lists expected expenses and income during a particular period. And the Oxford Dictionary defines it as an estimate of income and expenditures for a set period of time. So we're looking at a set period of time, obviously, the 2017-2018 school year, which begins July 1. And as we see when we go through the process, there are a lot of estimates. More estimates this year than we have had in prior years because of what's not going on at Springfield, I guess I should say. We have, in our district, like most districts in Illinois, we have, or as they load, we actually have 10 funds, 10 separate funds. Our educational fund, which records most of the transactions of the day-to-day operations of the district. Our operations and maintenance fund, pretty self-explanatory. That's all custodial services, maintenance services. Our utility costs are recorded there. Fund 30, our bond and interest, where we pay off the bonded indebtedness for all of our outstanding debt. Fund 40, transportation, that's for transporting our students, 10,500 students safely every day throughout the school year, and all the expenditures associated with that. Fund 50, IMR, we call it our IMRF, Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Those are for our, that's the pension fund for our non-certified staff, not our teachers. That's for everybody that's not covered under the teachers' pension fund. And the Social Security, that's in a separate fund. That's all the Social Security taxes, the 7.65 that we pay on employee wages. Fund 60, site and construction or capital projects, where we record, I'll call it our normal capital projects, not Fund 90, which is our life safety fund, which is a $27,250,000 bond that this district sold over the last 2 years, which is Fund 90. Working cash, a lot of districts have working cash. We have about $110,000 in our working cash fund. So it's basically been non-existent, at least in the 7 years I've been here. And our tort liability fund, that's really insurance payments. That's workers' comp, property casualty liability insurance is in Fund 80. So we have 10 separate funds, about 1,000, not about, at least today, 1,654 line items that we have to budget and prepare estimates for. So some of the major assumptions used in preparing next year's budget, we incorporate the budget guidelines that was approved by the Board of Ed at the February 8, 2017 meeting. We're currently negotiating with ESPA and SEIU, so those contracts are unsettled at this point. I do have a placeholder in there for salaries, 1.0% increase. Not to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I did want to have a placeholder in there. The administrator and non-represented employees also budgeted with 1%. That's not settled at this point either. But again, that's a placeholder. No increase in, we're looking at this point, no increase in CTC staffing our teachers from the current 16-17 school year. I have another slide that explains that a little bit more. There's a lot of unknowns because at this point, we'll talk about that a little bit later. The remainder of the life safety projects, which is Fund 90, the $27,250,000, will be expended during this fiscal year, 17-18. We had large expenditure last summer 16. We just started this week, so there's even a bid award tonight. So we expect all that to be done by probably March of next year, February, March. So that will all be done within the current fiscal year. In the biggie, we're also assuming the legislature will pass an appropriations act prior to the start of next school year, which they haven't done at this point. So at this point, our state aid dollars are zero. We're assuming about $19.5 million in state aid dollars next year, kind of which basically is consistent with this year, but we'll see that at this point in time has not happened. We've gone through the whole month of May. It's June today, mid-June, and we still don't have an appropriations, not only for K-12 but for the entire state as well. So unknown at this point. The federal budget, our new president, President Trump, unveiled his 2018 budget on May 23rd. His budget proposal would reduce Medicaid funding by $800 billion over 10 years. We in District 15 budget about $1.2 million annually in Medicaid revenue for all the services that our special services or special education staff members provide to our students. So we get reimbursed for their services. About 1.2. If that's cut by $800 billion over 10 years, we don't know what effect that would have. I will say at this point, like every president that presents a budget, that goes through so many changes. It's really what their plan is by the time it goes through the House, by the time it goes through the Senate, and all the negotiations. It never looks exactly as what the president proposes, whether it's the current president or previous presidents. I will say there's a different focus, though, I think, with the current administration that we've not seen before, with the focus on charter schools and choice, and redirecting some of the dollars like we have in Title I. It talks about increasing it $1 billion annually, but that would be earmarked for grants that support public school choice. So that's really a movement that we haven't seen under at least through the prior 8 years of President Obama and President Bush before President Trump. So it's a different focus than what we've seen before. At this point, we don't know where that's going to go. Federal budget starts October 1, and we know there's a lot of disagreement in Washington at this time, so we'll just have to see where that goes. And our Title I budget's $2.155 million, and we're assuming no reductions in that for next year. Obviously, a lot of that can change. We just don't know at this point. It's still early and premature.
Mike, at what point, some of those things that are up in the air, at what point do they firm up a little bit more? And I understand the inability to cut in terms of the budget potentially makes that unanswerable, but like Title I, which doesn't appear to be being affected, will there be a point when it's absolutely a done deal and you know that we're good with that?
I'm hoping by September we know what that is. I'm hoping by September, October we know what that is. Sometimes we've submitted the budgets as late as December. So, but even at September, we're 3 years into the new school year, and we're kind of guesstimating, what that's going to be. So I'm hoping by September, October, but it's so hard to hazard a guess even at this point. And the administration is so new. It's their first. It's obviously a brand new administration. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. I wish I had a better answer for that. I just don't.
So, and really the net effect on us is it keeps us from finalizing the budget until the point that we know.
It keeps us from finalizing it, even though but again, by state law, the board has to adopt the budget by September 30th. So I may be asking the board to adopt a budget that we still don't know what some of those revenue line items are going to be.
Yep. Thanks.
The state budget, our general state aid for the current year, or we call it GSA, is a little over $10 million, $10,172,000. We call them MCATs, mandated categorical payments, mostly for special ed and bilingual. It's about $5.5 million. Our transportation reimbursement for this year is $4.1 million. So our state allocation, if we take the MCAT, we take the transportation, add them together, that's about $9.6 million. Interesting, so the GSA payments, the general state aid payments, those have been being made monthly throughout the whole school year. They've been made according to schedule. Money's been appropriated for MCAT and transportation. Normally it's paid 4 times a year, about 25%, September, December, March, and then June. We've received one payment to date, $2,198,000. So of that 9.6, we've only received just under $2.2 million, which means the amount that we have at risk for the current school year of not receiving is just under $7.5 million. It's been appropriated, but the cash just doesn't exist.
And if we don't receive it by the end of June, it's not within the school year, or can we?
Well, which is my next 4 bullet points. So districts in Illinois, they'll do either cash basis or modified accrual. So cash basis is whatever money you get in by June 30th, that's the revenues, that's what you record. We're modified accrual, so revenues are recorded when they're earned and expenses are recorded when a liability is incurred. So what we've done in prior years, even though we didn't get those revenue items, the state aid revenue items by June 30, we've accrued those back and recorded them as revenue at June 30, But every year in the 7 years that I've been here, we've gotten those payments by December 31st, and our auditors have let us do that. So the state control's authority to pay those vouchers actually lapses on December 31st of this year. We've had some preliminary discussions with our auditors. They may not let us accrue that money back if there's no state budget by the time we have to by the time we present a budget to the board in September, or there's insufficient state borrowing. The backlog of bills I just read at the state level this time is about $14 billion. The estimate of the state deficit, $17 billion, June 30 of this year. So where we have accrued those in prior years, we may not be able to do it this year. So again, it all depends on what happens in Springfield and whether we have a budget or not. So obviously that's another big question mark out there that we're waiting to see what happens.
So Mike, this is kind of a two-part process. The budget plans for revenue expenditures for the year, and then the audited financials are actual expenses and actual revenues.
Correct.
And those have to be submitted to the state when?
I think the due date that has to go to the state is October 15th, I believe is the due date.
So we may not even get the payments from the state for the mandated categoricals by the time we have to submit our audited financials.
And that's true, but that's happened in other years too, because we have accrued them, but we did, and we would file our budget, our audit in our AFR by October 15, but we got those MCATs, we got those payments by December 31st.
Right, but this year what changes is potentially we're not able to accrue them, but we are going to filing our audited budget with or without it.
So if that happens, that means we have a budget to actual variance of about $7.5 million, and we have a budget deficit last year of $7.5 million. Even though we didn't budget for it, the actual could be $7.5 million deficit, which means our fund balance goes down by $7.5 million. Not just District 15, obviously, every other 850 districts in the state, but yeah. So as we talked about 17-18 school year, the state legislature has not adopted a budget for 17-18 yet. So no appropriation for K-12, obviously, beginning July 1. So no GSA, no MCATs, no transportation. So we estimate what those payments are. We have our own spreadsheets. We have Excel spreadsheets, and we estimate what the payments are, and then we compare it to what the state numbers come out. And we're right on because, we have the numbers, and so we can estimate what those payments are, basically to the penny. A little different next year. It's relatively the same, but what we have in next year's budget for those three line items is about $19.5 million. So if you think about it, the district could be at risk of not getting $19.5 million next year, plus the 7.5 maybe from 16-17, which is $27 million. If all that happens on about a $54, $55, $56 million fund balance, then our fund balance goes down by about half. Now, Dr. Thompson and I have talked about that, and we've talked about it, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Thompson, but I'll say I can't believe that would happen, because even though we have a strong fund balance and we have strong finances and our cash flow is fine, but that would mean so many districts in the state of Illinois wouldn't even be able to open their doors in September if there's no school aid budget. That's why I'm being optimistic that something's got to happen in Springfield. And so I'll remain optimistic that that's going to happen.
Do they have the ability to pick and choose who receives their payments and who doesn't? Or is that it's an all or nothing? Everybody gets it or everybody doesn't?
That's a good question. I would guess that, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. That's a good question, though.
I mean, I'm sure it's all part of what's being debated, in terms of new school funding formulas and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the House and the Senate passed the new EFAB, the Educational Financial, no, not EFAB, I'm sorry. They passed the Senate Bill 1, which is the new funding bill. Under that bill, no district in 17-18 would get less revenue than the district received in 16-17. And we saw in one estimate we'd get about $353,000 more in 17-18 than we received in 16-17. So it's called a hold harmless. No district loses money. That's also predicated on an additional $350 million of new money going into the school aid formula, where there's $17 billion in debt estimated as of June 30, 2017. Question is, where does that $350 million go to go into the school aid formula? So it's passed the Senate, it's passed the House, it's on Governor Rauner's desk, but he's not given an indication whether he's going to sign the new school aid funding bill or not. Another unknown. And then Federal Title Authority, because it goes from the federal to the state to the local districts. We've heard would probably cease because there's no state budget, so they can't allocate that money even though it's coming from the federal government. So Title I, Title II, Title III, we get about $2.7 million. So that could be at risk for next year as well, too.
Have we gotten that money for this school year?
We did, because they had an education budget this year, but they did not have an overall budget for the state.
Okay.
Correct. I said at CTC, and I also mentioned CTC staffing. Our goal is to hire all our CTC staff members starting at BA0 or $39,944, just under $40,000. May not be possible. We have some hard-to-hire positions, such as the bilingual special ed psychologists. We may have to bring some of those positions in higher than 40,000. As of June 5, 2017, and this number changes daily, 14.6 positions remain unfilled. So we're anticipating next year, 17-18, 881 positions at $68,370,000. And I say, Matt Barbini works very hard, with looking at the numbers, the staffing numbers for all the buildings, and Lisa Nuss and Matt and myself. One of the things we do, it seems like on a couple times a week, is look at our staffing numbers to make sure that we're right on line of where we should be. Lisa Nuss does a really, really good job making sure that we have the right people in the right positions. We're hiring them as close to BA0 as we can. We want a quality candidate, but we also want to be fiscally responsible as well. So we look at that throughout the entire summer. My appreciation to both Matt and Lisa for working on that together as a team. Our 68.3 doesn't include an estimated 425,000 in attrition. So what is that? That's a teacher that maybe has been here 2, 3, 4, 5 years and doesn't come back the following year. Spouse gets transferred, they want to start a family. We estimate 425,000 in attrition savings. There's a slide in the 5-year forecast in the next presentation. We saved over the last 2 years, each year about 650,000 by teachers who have 2, 3, 4, 5 years of experience and don't come in, and then we hire the replacement at about 40,000. So our number of 68.3 doesn't include attrition savings of 425,000. So at this point, we're probably a little bit high. We won't know this until August. We won't even know the final number in August, to be honest with you, because we're still hiring. We'll know it in September. We estimated 879.39 positions in our 5-year forecast for about $68 million. There was actually one position, should have been at 880.39, but there was one bilingual position that we knew we weren't going to hire, so I didn't budget for it. So basically, we're at the same number. When we did CTC negotiations in March of 16, we calculated 880 positions for $67.8 million. So that's when we did our 10-year contract with teacher salaries averaging an increase of less than 1% per year. So our variance, where we're looking at today, compared to March of 26, we're off 1/10 of 1%. So we're right on target, our hiring for this year and our CTC budget to where we thought we would be in March of 16. We actually did 10 years of teacher salary budgets. So 2 years out, we're right exactly where we should be. 1/10 of 1%, which really is zero. And again, attrition savings, new hires, we won't know that until September. Families with students move in throughout the entire summer. That has an effect on class sizes and everything else. That's why we have to monitor it all summer long. So again, that number will change. We'll update it in August, finalize it in September. I will say, even in prior years, we didn't have a final, we didn't have that number finalized in August. Total property tax revenue, $117.4 million. That's about 77.8% of our, 17.18% of our district revenue. Again, state sources, which should have a big question mark, about 19.5%. And federal sources, $9.5 million, about 6.29%. So all of that's about 96.3% of our revenue. And then the 117.4 million, we collect taxes about 98.4% on our tax levy. So about 1.4, because our tax levy is about 119.1, I think it is. So we're about 1.6, 1.7 uncollected taxes for property tax appeals, PTABs we call them, property tax assessments, property tax appeals, be it board of review requests as well. So there are parts that go uncollected. So we're about 1.5, 1.6 million. About 4 or 5 years ago, that number was actually as high as $5 million of uncollected. So I think before, when we saw a lot of the property taxes go up, there were a lot of appeals, and our collection rate went down. So sometimes on revenue, so we estimate about 1.5, 1.6 million, or I said 98.4%, 98.5. We're pretty close on that, but that can fluctuate. And sometimes, if like that one year, we were at 5 million, budgeted 5 million, and it fell, I think, to like 3.5 million. So we had a $1.5 million positive variance in our property taxes, which is only 1% on 117 million, but it's also a $1.5 million variance. So in a district our size, with the budget the size that it is, even a 0.5% or a 1% variance can be $1 million or more, and we see that. And then some other budget highlights on the expenditures. Total salaries, we have 103 million, or 66.5%. Our employee benefits, our health insurance is almost 13%. So what is that? We're about 78, 79, 80% salaries and benefits for employees. That's for all funds, which is what we should be. I mean, we're a people business, right? We're a people business. We have teachers, we have teacher aides, we have bus drivers, custodians, maintenance workers, office support. So we're a people-oriented business. So for a district to be 80% salaries and benefits, that's really a norm in a public school district. Just some interesting numbers. Utilities are $2.5 million almost. Liability insurance, that's really a tort fund, Fund 80, $1.2 million. That's our property casualty liability insurance, and also our work comp insurance. We're self-funded for workers' comp. I think we budget about $450,000 for premiums and claims on a year for workers' comp. Technology expenditures to maintain all the technology in our classrooms, 2.7. The food and supply cost to provide all of our school lunches and school breakfasts, just under 1.9. Our Fund 60 expenditures, $4 million. Transportation fund is 2.5. That's excluding salaries and benefits on transportation, and also on O&M is 2.7. That's excluding salaries and benefits as well. Total transportation fund, if I put salaries and benefits and everything else in there, it's about $9.4 million. O&M, that's excluding utilities. Utilities are part of O&M, and excluding salaries and benefits, so 2.7. So really, money to maintain all of our buildings on a daily basis, about 2.7. So if you look at it, those just those 8 or 9 line items, about $141 million of our $155.27 million budget is just on those 9 items. So when I look at that, and I think to myself, wow, even if we didn't get the $19.5 million, you could cut all those other items out, and you still couldn't get that by cutting everything else out of the budget if the state doesn't come through and pass an Appropriations Act for next year. So where does that leave us for tentatively for 17-18? Our proposed budget, I call it deficit or expenditures exceeding revenues, almost $9 million. However, we always subtract out Fund 90. That's the $27 million of the life safety bonds. The Frank C. Whiteley project, that was an add this year. That's replaced the envelope on Frank C. Whiteley. We've done some of that in 16-17. Some will be done in 17-18. That'll finish up in 18-19 fiscal year. So that's kind of an extra, the way I look at it, kind of outside the ordinary. We got some extra Fund 90 project costs in Fund 60, about $2 million. Take those items out, that's about we actually have almost a break-even budget, a little bit higher, $534,000. We looked at in November, we were about $1 million in the red. So we're really running where we thought we were back in November. Really no big surprises there. Again, as we look at it, our biggest, the biggest ifs is really at the state. Federal, yes, but not to the extent that is at the state level. So again, we look at our proposed budget next year, $8.9 million, $8,921,000. Expenditures in excess of revenues, and then we break all of our revenues by fund. I won't go through all those slides, and the expenditures. And then you can see our fund balance summary. That top number on the third column, there's that $8,921,000 of fund balance, which would get us an ending fund balance if all that comes in about $53.7 million, or about 34%. ISB, State Board of Education, recommends 25%. We'd be at 33%. We've been over 30% for the last 7 years, at least since Dr. Thompson and I have been here. So financially, we've done well. So we've controlled our expenditures well. Really, at this point, it's what are the revenues going to come in to give us the revenue to provide those services that we have to provide on a day-to-day basis.
So this is like a snapshot of what could be in September, and Mike will continue to monitor what's going on in the state, monitor what's happening in the district, change some of these numbers, and keep you informed, and then September we'll come back with as much information as we possibly can to guide the budget for the upcoming school year.
Yeah, we'll make some changes for August for a public budget hearing. Anybody from the community can speak. We usually make some changes for that. Excuse me, and then we'll see where we're at in September. Hopefully, we had some hard data in September that we don't have currently in June.
And Mike, just to remind myself that the net change in fund balance in 15-16, the reason why it's so such an increase, that's when we got our life safety funds.
That was the issuance of the bonds.
Yes, that's when we got them, and now we're spending them basically.
Yep, yes. Yeah, we actually issued it twice. So that's the thing about it, we issued them in 2 separate years. We issued them, and then we started spending them. But the basic reason is that's because of the issuance of the bonds. That's why we're $10.9 million profit in 2015-16.
Got it.
Yes.
But as you'll see in Corey's presentation, that amount, right, is about $55 million. It's staying pretty constant.
Yeah, he's got a good slide. You'll see what the fund balance was 7 years ago, what we're estimating it is today. And that's taking out Fund 90, which is the life safety bonds, and you'll see that fund balance stays pretty consistent over that whole period of time. Yes.
Any other questions? All right, Mike, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. I'll ask Corey to come up, and he's going to present our 5-year projections. Thanks for scrolling through the previous, going back to the 5-year projections. Sorry about the change. Just made sense to have the budget first. Or you can wait.
Good evening, President. Shoot by Dr. Thompson and members of the board. Tonight we're going to review the updated 5-year financial projections, which now include the 21-22 fiscal year. General state aid. We take a look back. The state started prorating GSA payments in the 11-12 school year, and if we were to go back from that time point to now, the amount of money that the district has lost due to proration is about $4.4 million and counting. So, and that amount is calculated as if they had funded GSA at 100%. During this roughly the same period, starting in 10-11, and then with regular transportation, and then in 12-13 with special ed transportation, we started to see prorations of various levels over that time. The current year at 71% for regular, 91% for special ed. When you add it all up, it comes to about $9.4 million over that period of time. And then when you combine that with GSA, we're looking at almost $14 million if they'd been able to fully fund GSA and transportation that we've lost. And at this point, as Mike said, you know, are they likely to prorate? Who knows? Given that they've done it in the past, it wouldn't be surprising. At what levels, that's really the question. Here's a look at our investment income the district's had over a number of years. As you can see, prior to the recession, there were some years where the rates were quite good. And then once the rates basically tanked, we've had, you know, what I would view relative to our fund balances, almost no investment income. This year, we've started to see our rates creep up. Through May, I think we're at roughly $400,000 for investment income. Keep in mind that does have between $50,000 and $60,000 that's primarily attributable to the bond money that we've had. So we've increased our budget. I think, you know, hopefully over time we'll could see that creep back up towards the 7 figures. In the last 5 years, the district's had an additional 50 certified staff positions added. There were some large one-time only budget expenditures with some new math adoption, the new science adoption at $1.3 and $750,000. I think as Mike talked about the healthcare increases, the district's seen we're assuming roughly 5%. If I remember correctly, the increase for next fiscal year's, the rates that were passed back in April was right at about 5.7%. If you look at the 7-year average, from my perspective, I think the district's done quite well when it comes to the cost of healthcare, and I'm sure there are many districts, particularly smaller ones, that would be quite jealous of that 2.4% number.
Corey, before you go on, could we just point out that those 50 positions that were added, the general population of the district really hadn't increased that much in that 6-year period, but it was primarily because of changes in bilingual programming and the requirements the state placed upon us. The biggest chunk of teachers that were hired to those 50 positions was really because the changing of the exiting scores for bilingual kids and the requirements that we have bilingual support, resource teachers, and bilingual classes. It also is a factor of our changing demographics, where we've had to add teachers for specific populations or programs to meet the needs of the kids that are coming into the schools. So we've tried really hard not to increase the positions, but sometimes the state forces us to do it, and other times the changing population of our district requires us to do it to meet their needs. Thanks.
So I think this is a really good slide that Mike was kind of alluding to. You know, in those slides of a look back, there wasn't a lot of really good news over that period of time, but yet the district was able to, you know, maintain a stable fund balance over that period of time, and, you know, come out ahead compared to the projections. If you were to take away those first couple of years, the last 4 where you're a little over $1 million. If you were to put that in perspective of the district's budget, the size of the district's overall budget, that's in the neighborhood of roughly 1%. So.
Corey, can I ask a question about the benefit slide that was back to?
Yeah.
Okay, so your 7-year average increases, I seem to recall seeing a number from last year that was something around 14.2% for benefits increase. And then this year we're a little over, or projecting to be a little over 5. Is it possible to get the actual number for
each year,
the 7 years back, and then a projection of what you anticipate for 5 years plus for potentially? Just to be looking at data separated as opposed to
we can definitely get that.
Aggregated.
And if I remember correctly, that 14% was the increase of healthcare costs to employees, not the cost to the district, because but we'll get that information to you. I remember that figure, and we'll get it to you.
Yeah, we've got them because we actually had to get those average annual increases to calculate that number.
Right.
I don't remember in that 7-year period ever going that high to 14%.
It was on a budgetary sheet that.
It was audited financials.
Yes.
Well, but we've got them.
Okay, great.
We'll get that to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I mentioned the roughly 5%, 5.7% rate rate increase for next year. I think one thing that's key to remember when it comes to District 15's healthcare costs is that since we're self-funded, even though the rates that we charge and set aside as we run payroll and the employees set aside, if we were to have a really good year, our actual cost might increase less. In theory, they could even go down. They could also go higher. But I think what we've seen, since Mike's been here, is that, they have been generally lower. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Actively managed, plan, and also the fact that we're large and we're able to self-fund. I mean, it's a cheaper way to go than if we were paying the traditional premiums to Blue Cross. This next slide, even though the dates aren't on there, this is from the 14-15 fiscal year. And what it is a comparison of the amount of money District 15 spends per pupil relative to all the average of the 115 elementary school districts within Cook County. I think the nice thing about this is that we spend less overall per pupil, yet we spend more on instructional services than our peer districts within Cook County. Now we're going to take a look forward as we get ready to look at the summary pages. As it relates to the tax levy, we're assuming a 1.5% CPI increase. As you can see, there's the last 5 years actual rates. The Fed has set a target inflation rate of 2%. I looked at the CPI numbers today through the end of May from last December. Right now we're running at about 1.4%. What we've typically seen with that is it slowly builds up towards the year, and then once you get towards the late fall, you just kind of hope that it hangs on enough and doesn't, prices don't drop a lot as they tend to do around Thanksgiving and Christmas.
So the main point about that, as you're probably aware, is that our levy from the previous year gets increased by CPI and plus any new growth. But we calculate how much revenue we're going to get from our taxpayers based upon CPI because that's the increase that we get each year. It's tied to CPI.
Yeah. And as the last point notes, every 0.5% of CPI is worth roughly $600,000 to the district annually compounded. The district does have a few TIFs within its boundaries. Some ones of note that are going to expire that now fall within this updated 5-year forecast. The Dundee Road TIF, when that expires, we're projecting that it would bring in roughly $860,000 extra. The way the TIF, when the value of the TIF expires, the current market value of it minus what it was when it went in, 20-something years ago, that comes onto the district's tax rolls as new growth, which is why we're able to capture such a large amount. In our forecast, we're assuming no property tax freeze, which is something that's been talked about quite a bit in the media. And just for reference, if a 2-year property tax freeze was passed, that would be over a 5-year period. That would cost the district roughly $17 million, and that would continue to compound over time. So over 10 years, it would be 34 or more, and it would just keep going and going. As of now, we're assuming no changes in the level of state funding for GSA and the categoricals. Continue to plan for that annual 5% health increase. Keep the CTC counts level. The cost for lane advancements, roughly $200,000, offset by projected $425,000 annually, although that number for the last couple of years was higher, as Mike mentioned earlier. This slide shows by fund the revenues during the 5-year period of the forecast. When you look at them in total, you see slight increases primarily attributable to the increases in CPI for our tax levy. This slide shows the expenditures by fund through the 5 years very similar if you were to take away 16 and 17, where we're spending a significant amount of health, life, safety fund and money in the capital projects fund. In total, you would see just slight increases in spending by year.
Why is there the big jump in the educational expenditures from 2021 to 21-22? Where it goes from 125 million to 128?
Good question.
I had two questions on that. One was that, and then on the revenue slide, there is an increase in revenue in transportation for 2017, 2018 of $500,000.
Yeah, so when we forecast out the transportation fund, besides property taxes, the bulk of the money in transportation comes from two sources: property taxes, and then the reimbursement claims for regular transportation and special ed. As we put items into our forecast, there's a 1 year for transportation. The reimbursement for like 21, 22 would be based upon the expenditures of 2021. So as there would be potentially fluctuations in the transportation fund, for example, as we project out like something larger, like bus replacement, if we had looked at our schedule of the buses that we needed to replace, if there happened to be 1 year we replaced, say, 8, and the next year we replaced 12 or 13, that's something that could affect it. As far as the educational fund, going back to the expenditures.
The reason I can, excuse me, I can answer that. The reason that if you look at 1920, it's 126.7 million, excuse me, and then it drops down to 125.2, and then back up to 128. There's 56 teachers that retire at the end of the 1920 school year, so they're going out at $110,000, $115,000, $120,000, 56 of them. The new replacement's coming in at $40,000.
Okay.
So it's kind of almost like an anomaly, because you have 56 teachers, you have that big salary decrease going into the budget in 2021, and then we see it going back up in 21, 22. So if you look at the ed fund from 1920, it's 126.7 million, and then goes up to 128.1 million 2 years later. So we're trending up, but we're seeing a big decrease in 2021 because of the 56, I think it's 56 teachers are retiring that year.
It's an incredible quantity.
It's a lot. Now, those numbers will change, though, too, because teachers have to notify us by, I think it's February 1st, their intent to retire, and they go out on re-op, which is a 6% increases over 4 years. So as we get those numbers will change going out. We just don't know what they are on the outer years yet, because we haven't got to that point yet. But that's why we see that ed fund going down and then back up like that.
That makes sense. It would seem like a strange anomaly.
Yeah, good question.
Okay. And then the fund balance slide, similar to the expenditures, if you were to take away the first couple of years where the fund balance is decreasing, which is the district spending down the bond proceeds for the construction projects, you start to see positive fund balances in the latter years. And then if you were to look at in 21-22, the 55.8 million, compare that back to an amount prior to when the district issued the life safety money, you would see that the district is projecting to be in stable condition from a fund balance perspective. So at the end, being able to look out at the end of 21-22 and see that the projections as of now are showing 34% fund balance, it's a strong fund balance. Any questions?
I just want to be clear, the fund balance, that's assuming that we still get the money from the state and from the federal government, correct?
Right. So as far, the revenue assumptions that would play into that, the state aid, the federal aid, in this forecast is that it would stay roughly the same. So, and, clearly if they were to finally make a decision, on revenue and expenditures at the state level that were to change things we would have that in the next presentation of the forecast, which would be in the fall once we have the final numbers for fiscal year 17.
Thank you.
So having 34% fund balance is healthy. What we don't want to do is, like some of our neighboring districts have 100 to 200% of their annual revenue in fund balances, which is taking taxpayer money and just stockpiling it. This is a healthy amount that protects us against whatever Springfield might do, but it's not an exorbitant amount where you're taking taxpayer dollars and doing other things that they probably could be using more wisely. But we will continue to monitor this, and this forecast right now puts us in a good position. If things change, we'll change the forecast, and then this board will have to decide how we're going to navigate those more negative consequences if they occur. Nice job, Corey. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Corey.
And we'll get back to Lisa on that 14% number. Okay, the last item in my section is the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee overview and recommendations, and Dr. Barbini is going to come up and introduce some of the co-committee members.
The clicker will work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the PowerPoint came in the revised, updated electronic packet, so you have to open that one up if you want to see the PowerPoint on your iPad.
All right, good evening again, Dr. Thompson, President Chupai, members of the Board of Education, and distinguished guests. This evening, 3 members of the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee will be joining me in providing you with an overview and a series of recommendations regarding the important work that we engaged in pretty much throughout the month of May. And the committee members will introduce themselves before they begin their respective sections. Here you go, Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin Williams. I'm an 8th grader at Walter I. Sondling Junior High.
Carrie Wilson, principal at Plum Grove Junior High School. Julie Weezer, parent.
Okay, the purpose of this presentation is to review Senate Bill 100, which requires school districts to make a PTAC committee, which annually reviews student behavior. And provide school boards with suggestions for growth and improvement with policy and practice. Tonight we will be going over PTAC membership, SB 100 overview and implementation, the process, recommendations, reflections, policies, and then a Q&A. PTAC membership includes the different people in PTAC, which includes 4 students, 3 parents, 2 teachers, 1 attorney, 2 building administrators, and 3 district administrators. The 15 different PTAC members represented 7 out of 20 schools in D15, with schools being located in Palatine and Rolling Meadows.
All right, it's my turn now to provide an overview regarding Senate Bill 100. You can go to seminars for days or weeks about Senate Bill 100, so I'm going to distill this down, to the most important aspects associated with this very important reform piece of legislation in the area of student discipline. Senate Bill 100 largely became a law and was passed for 2 important reasons. The first of which dealt with outcomes, poor outcomes that are aligned with students who receive multiple out-of-school suspensions in their educational careers, as well as students who are expelled from school as a portion or the entirety of their educational careers. We know that students in both of those categories are more than likely to drop out of school, more than likely have involvement with law enforcement, and be a part of the criminal justice system. And there are real costs associated with that, not only just for the individual child or student, but for their families, their neighborhoods, their communities, and then that just continues to grow grow across towns, regions, states, and across the nation. The other reason that Senate Bill 100 became a law was the over-reliance that the Illinois State Board of Education and other legislators in the state had identified in terms of public school districts using exclusionary discipline practices as their go-to method of addressing behavior. And exclusionary discipline basically means out-of-school suspensions and expulsions. And it was looking at areas, in those areas associated with that over-reliance on exclusionary discipline in terms of minority populations, students that were second language, as well as students that were in special education programs. One of the things that the law did for us as administrators is it provided us with thresholds for administrators to use and follow. They're required thresholds that have to be met when considering and issuing out-of-school suspensions. One of the other things that the law required us to do, which District 15, I can proudly report, is ahead of the curve, is really look at building systems to teach, model, and reinforce appropriate behavior to try to prevent misconduct from occurring in the first place, and then a focus more on restoration, restorative practices, instead of looking at just out-of-school suspensions and expulsions, because the state law is saying you need to reduce those as a public school district to the maximum extent practicable. So it's really looking at misbehavior as an opportunity to teach and learn and help students re-engage with whoever they engaged in misconduct with or towards to help repair those relationships. Those conversations are often more difficult for students to have, all right, than actually serving the time associated with the detention and in-school suspension, an out-of-school suspension, or even an expulsion. And so this is a slide provided by our law firm, and Dr. Carrie Wilson, principal of Plum Grove, is going to talk more about this, but this deals with the training that we received, and it showcases what those thresholds are in terms of out-of-school suspensions 1 to 3 days, out-of-school suspensions 4 and then more. And then as Caitlin had indicated, one of the requirements associated with Senate Bill 100 is that a parent-teacher advisory committee needed to be formed not just as a recommendation, which was what was in the law beforehand, so districts could choose to do this, all right, but it became an annual requirement, and that's why we met in May, all right, and that's why we're here before you this evening.
So implementation of Senate Bill 100, all student behavior policies were revised to align or comport with Senate Bill 100, and this was approved by the Board of Education last June 2016. All administrators received training on Senate Bill 100 by the legal counsel for District 15 in the fall of last year, 2016. A checklist was developed, which has been an amazing tool for all of us to use in times of disciplinary actions with students. In collaboration with building administration, district administration, and legal counsel to assist with engaging in full, fair, and thorough investigations into misconduct, as well as to align with Senate Bill 100 requirements.
We met 3 times, the first being on May 9th. We started by reviewing the positive behavior interventions and supports, the PBIS system, and understanding how that is currently being used in our schools. We then discussed the student discipline procedures checklist and learned why it is in place and how it helps to maintain a safe and orderly learning environment. And finally, we heard information regarding the legal requirements surrounding our mission, and questions were answered. At our second meeting on May 16th, we spent time understanding the types of policy, procedural, and practice changes to consider in order to stay within the legal guidelines provided to our schools. We then broke into 3 balanced groups to brainstorm the recommendations to present for the 2017-2018 school year. And our final meeting on May 23rd was a challenge as we evaluated the 22 ideas produced during our brainstorming session. After careful consideration, consensus was reached on the 7 recommendations that you'll hear this evening.
This first recommendation focuses on educating parents and students on resources for safety, bullying, and mental health. We talked about making the online bullying and safety reporting center advertised more and better. To go along with that idea, we also thought that the SOS program should be more talked about. Recommendation 1 also includes adding information in the district and different school websites. This additional information includes who to go to when for students and families to look at when they have problems or concerns, and various information about bullying.
And not to disappoint you, Caitlin, and other PTAC committee members, we have already moved the safety, the Bullying and Safety Reporting Center link from lower on the District 15 website to a more prominent area front and center when you land on that page. Additionally, with respect to the one-to-one Chromebooks that we're going to be implementing in the fall, we're going to make sure that that Bullying and Safety Reporting Center link is actually in the bookmark toolbar. So that was also something that we've done since meeting in May. Didn't want to disappoint you, Caitlin.
The second recommendation that came from our meetings was to increase awareness about SB 100 by providing all administrators with a refresher course and all staff with regularly scheduled training during early release or institute days next year.
Recommendation number 3, misconduct provides really an opportunity for reteaching. Engaging in addressing student misconduct from a position of caring and dignity and respect to all students. A focus on restorative approaches that repair relationships, and looking more at individual issues versus group consequences.
Recommendation number 4 talks about providing structured and sustained professional improvement to staff and administrators on CHAMPS, verbal de-escalation strategies, and restorative justice.
And recommendation number 5 was develop a menu of restorative practices as a reference for staff and administrators to select from and use with students to repair relationships after the misconduct occurs.
Recommendation number 6 is to be consistent. Implementation of a systematic program in all schools in District 15, like Expect Respect, which is a PBIS program, intervention to prevent bullying in schools. Recommendation 7, in consultation with District Legal Counsel, develop a letter for use when both there is an in-school suspension and an out-of-school suspension is issued to a student. In current years, this year we've used 2 letters, and what we're going to do with this recommendation number 7 is to send 1 letter home if a misconduct is represented by an in-school and an out-of-school suspension. Reflections on our process, it was really a great group. It was a collaborative effort. I think the students and our parents really provided a global opportunity for us to improve our practices within our schools, especially our student voice here. But District 15 schools are ahead of the curve when it comes to PBIS implementation and compliance with state laws on student behavior. In current year, Midwest PBIS recognition, in our district, we have 10 platinum awards, 9 gold, and 1 bronze, and those represent the schools within our district. District 15 is committed to continuous growth and improvement. Student participation in PTAC was very important, as we mentioned, and their contributions were both relevant and very much valued.
By cultivating multiple perspectives from students, staff, parents, and administration, we added value and is critical to appropriately addressing matters pertaining to our students and schools because, as Matt told us many, many times, none of us are as strong or as smart as all of us. Questions?
If you have any questions, I'm going to pass this mic to the folks on my right, your left.
One of the things you guys listed for the recommendations was having individual versus group consequences. What exactly is a group consequence?
Really taking the time to do a thorough investigation and not just looking at a situation and because a student might have been there at that time that they were involved with it.
Like guilt by association?
Yes. Yeah, so really taking the time with our checklists, making sure that we've done a thorough investigation, that we've interviewed many of the students involved with the situation. We've got written statements, and it really provides opportunity for that reteaching moment also, but also just so the consequences where it needs to be and not with the whole group.
Okay, and then and along the lines of consequences, I know a lot of times when students are disciplined, the consequences are kept secret. And I think that sometimes may be a problem, especially with kids that are victims, because they may not feel that anything's been done about a situation because they don't know what's been done about it. And also I think it's a problem with it being a deterrent for other students that may do something wrong. Is that something you guys are looking at changing?
So student discipline consequences are a part of what would be considered under the law as a student record. And student records have protections that by law administrators have to follow. So we cannot, as administrators, disclose to anybody other than that student's parents or legal guardian what the consequence or consequences were or are, for an event associated with misconduct. So Dr. Wilson sharing what the consequence would be, for Mike Adamczyk's poor behavior in the cafeteria, sharing that with anybody other than Mike Adamczyk's parents or wife, it would be a situation, where we would have violated any number of laws in terms of the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, the Illinois Student Records Act, etc. So, our hands are tied, in terms of what we can share. And so what we do often share with parents is, we know that this is a concerning event. We recognize that, and we recognize that, your child, was the recipient of something that was not something that we would otherwise support, and we, as, a school, have addressed that matter and have taken appropriate legal or school-based consequences, and sometimes we also indicate, we've contacted our SRO, our school resource officer, and they're aware of that as well. I mean, that's really pretty much the extent in which we can share under the law. So we
But the other thing, Frank, is this restorative justice does force the person that was, the perpetrator of victimization, he has to go correct that situation. So if something happens to another student, they may not know the consequences, but they do see the action of the student coming and trying to restore the relationship and getting to a better place. The other thing we can do is we can say, we have a checklist, and this is an administrator checklist. These are the kinds of consequences that are issued for these kinds of behaviors. We can't tell you exactly what happened for this student, but these are the kinds of consequences that can be issued for these kinds of behaviors, and you can be assured we have taken steps. So that would be helpful.
Yeah, so is that kind of information then available to all the students so they know, hey, if you do whatever X, you can end up getting A, B, or C? Is that...
It's listed in our student parent handbook and also in our student assignment notebook, our different misconducts. Also in our kickoff with our PBIS assemblies in the fall, we talk about that. We talk about what could happen. If this happens, this will happen.
So the kids are going to be aware of what the consequences are.
Yes, there's clarity.
Each type of infraction.
Yes, and then it's also reiterated within classrooms because PBIS is within all areas of the school environment.
Okay. So then with regards to, making sure that things get, I think one of the things was, equitably people are, and consistently, things are being enforced. So the way that being that the consequences are all kept private, it's kind of hard to understand whether or not things are being done consistently since nobody, who knows whether or not things are being done consistently because that information seems to be closely guarded.
All right, we do a couple of things at the building and district level to address that. The first of which is if there's been some significant misconduct that really impacts whether it's severe in an individual sense or it's a global issue or a large group issue, what we've done is we've had building administrators call voluntary meetings with the staff members that work directly with the student or students involved to just inform them of what happened, the outcomes of the investigation, and we will tell our staff from time to time what the consequences were associated with that misconduct. So that's one aspect of communication that we do with staff all right, to assist with that. And the staff do often ask, hey, this happened to this student over here, and the same or similar thing happened to that student over here, and there were different consequences. Why is that? Well, Senate Bill 100 directs building administrators to really look at misconduct on a case-by-case basis. And you have to factor in all the permutations of actions and reactions within any given event, as well as take in the student's past history when making decisions under the thresholds that the state has given us in terms of discipline. So that's one area. The other area is we redact student names, of course, but in the board packet, in the board materials, there is information about the issuance of out-of-school suspensions, as well as alternative suspensions at John Conyers Learning Academy. That's in the board packet, that goes in every time there's a board meeting that indicates, all right, this is what happened in terms of the area of misconduct, and here was the consequence or consequences issued.
Okay. You know what, this committee meets annually, and the focus of this committee really was to not focus on being punitive, but of being proactive, trying to prevent things, and then when things do occur, because kids will misbehave, they'll make poor choices, is to make it a learning opportunity and to restore the community back to its original state. So it's a real positive look, and this committee spent a lot of time doing some really great things, and they'll meet annually, and so they'll be able to review and see where the recommendations implemented in a consistent way across the district. Do we need to make any changes? So I think there's some really good work that's being done here. I think they've got some foundational things that are going to help make our schools better places for all kids this coming school year.
And that seems sort of being about making this a positive experience and looking for positive outcomes. Do we, in the teams that are included in sort of the reteaching and their sort of justice piece, are we including student services and counseling services, like the mental health aspect of this?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
We're very lucky to have as many support systems in the district as we do. So our psychologists, our social workers, we have support from St. Alexia Brothers that are into the junior highs, our school resource officer, many tiers. District help comes over, parent meetings, intake meetings. It is a very thorough process, restoring justice, making sure the student is well, and we do, mental wellness is one of our key things.
And that's why we also had as a member of the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee, Ms. Sue Gehring, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, who, among other responsibilities, is in charge of mental health in the district for students. And so Sue is a very valuable member of the committee, as were the other committee members that weren't able to join us this evening.
And my understanding, just from the description that we've had before, when you presented about SB 100, and we're moving away from, concepts in terms of discipline that are, something that you might see in the criminal justice system, concepts like deterrence and things like that, where now you're really looking at restoration and some of the concepts that you've described. And that based on, I assume, that the research that led to SB 100 to start off with. So, that's certainly, I'm in agreement with that, and that's the law anyway. But one question I had is, do you, from the committee, looking at statistics and whatnot, are you, was our district a district that was maybe using suspensions, expulsions, those things more than the state would have liked prior to SB 100 being passed?
We haven't had or received any notifications from the state that we've been disproportionate in our discipline practices. From what I'm gathering, I do take heart. So I don't know, Board Member Kane, about that exactly. So I probably shouldn't continue talking, about that. It's something we can look into.
Thank you.
You are very welcome.
I got one more question here. I know when they have the suspensions, the student is supposed to have a hearing. How do you conduct the hearings? What's the framework for a hearing? Like, who's involved?
All right, so Senate Bill 100 does require, if there's an out-of-school suspension that's been issued to a student, a reentry meeting with the student and the parent and building administration, just to kind of review things, to do some reteaching, and really, you know, on that restorative side, you know, get us to where we need to be in terms of relationships. That being said, under state law, families do have the right to request a suspension review hearing for out-of-school suspensions. When that is the case, and I've had the good fortune of being here for 3 years. Hopefully, if I don't ramble on in more board meetings, I can stay around for another 3. But what happens, and there's only been one hearing request for an out-of-school suspension in my tenure here. And what we've done for that one, and we will be doing that moving forward if we do receive a request, is we do seek out a third-party hearing officer, and that hearing officer meets with both the administration and meets with the family and maybe even the student. And it's not like it's formal rules of evidence that apply. It's not like a formal legal proceeding, et cetera. But what happens is the administration typically begins with an opening statement. The family or student begins with an opening statement. Then the administration presents the evidence. And then there's an opportunity to cross-examine made by the parents to the administrator. Then the parents go. The administration can cross, and then there's closing statements. And the hearing officer can ask any number of questions throughout the process, and their job is to render a report with respect to not only what was shared at the hearing, but then also his or her findings, and that report is shared with the Board of Education for the Board of Education to review, uphold, revise, etc.
All right, thanks. We have one more question. And this is just more parsing to some of the language in here, but one of the overview slides for the suspension and expulsion summary, there's a bullet for suspension 1 to 3 days, disruption to other students' learning environments, opportunities, versus substantially disrupts and interferes with operations. So how do we determine that, I guess, that difference?
So what is substantial and what is not? Is that right, Board Member Wang? You want to take this, Carrie?
I think what this process has really done is given us more definitions of a framework through our investigations and our checklist to be fair to all students. And what I see in the differentiation here is that there really are more descriptors, and that we can't just look at the surface. We have to dig deep with investigations and be fair. So
I can think of one case by case. How about if a student is in possession of maybe some marijuana paraphernalia, and then another student is trying to sell that paraphernalia at school? That's more disruptive to be selling something than just to be in possession. And so I think that would be an example of when it's been more disruptive, when kids know that there was some selling going on versus somebody just maybe bringing something by accident or not really impacting the school in a broader way. So substantial disruption would be when something larger happens. Just on an individual basis, that's probably not as so substantial.
Okay. I had a question with regard to specifically recommendation 1 here. I know that we began the implementation on it already at this point, correct?
The anti-bullying
on the website.
Recommendation.
So with regard to that, obviously there's some peer pressure to not report, and then there's peer pressure once you report. Is the ability to report anonymously through this link without having to go to speak with an administrator ahead of time, so that the person who's reporting feels as though they can report without having blowback, so to speak?
it is anonymous.
Okay.
It is absolutely anonymous. And we have gotten, last year at my particular school, I had 3 that were anonymous. And so right away, if a name is mentioned, we contact parents. You know, we investigate with staff members, with other students, and, you know, move forward on an investigation. But it gives students, I think, security in knowing they have somewhere to go, and that was one of the reasons which came from Caitlin and the student group to move that on our website so it can be recognized.
And with regard to that, putting it on the one-to-one Chromebooks, I'm assuming we'll have a digital footprint on that. So is there any thought that that Chromebook will be assigned to a particular student, that student will have this in the back of their mind that, hey, there's a digital footprint and we don't want to report because they're going to know who we are? Has that been given any thought?
Board Member Smoka, I'm going to learn from my lesson over here. I'll look into that and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I can see that as being a legitimate, I could see a student, if they're issued an individual Chromebook and they know it's been issued to them and it's tracked, I could see how that might be an issue, so we'll look into that.
All right, thank you.
I think if it's just, if you think of that as an advertising piece, that everybody's got it on their open page of their Chromebook, they see it, they know it's available, and we can somehow figure out a way of just making sure that kids are absolutely aware that that's not the only place, or you can go on the website. If you want complete and total anonymity, there are other ways of getting there, but at least it's right there always.
Thank you.
Caitlin and Julie, thank you very much for joining us. It was great to have a parent voice and PTA voice and food pantry voice, and it was nice to have a really articulate student. Caitlin, thank you for your contribution. I know that you made this process better, and really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of it, and hopefully you can do more things here in your last year and then when you go on to high school. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody has an interest in addressing the board, if you'd pick up a green paper in the front entryway and fill it out and pass it on to June Becker, that would be great. Okay. Next. May I have a motion for the acceptance of, reading and acceptance of minutes, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the following meetings of the Board of Education: the May 9th, 2017 Special Board of Education meeting and executive session, the May 10th, 2017 regular Board of Education meeting, and the May 23rd, 2016 regular Board of Ed meeting with the retiree recognition piece as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Smoka?
Aye.
Chupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, sorry. Next on the agenda will be the board discussion and reports. We will start with item 17.610. That's the EdRed Council legislation report.
So with regards to EdRed there, I just started making contact with that group. I talked to Karen Valadez, who is the main lobbyist down in Springfield. Talked to her for a while on the phone. The biggest topic is Senate Bill 1, which has to do with how the funds get distributed amongst the different districts. And it was mentioned that the big sticking point seems to be the way funds are being given to the Chicago public school system, and that some people still think that's being done unfairly. So it was passed by a narrow margin in the House and was passed in the Senate. It's not enough votes to overturn a veto, and say it's likely that it could be vetoed. So that's really the most up-to-date on that. Other than the fact that obviously they haven't passed a budget, so. But that's the main thing.
Great, thanks, Frank. 1-5 Foundation?
No updates at this point.
Finance Committee.
No updates at this point, but given the tentative budget and five-year forecast presented tonight, there will be a lot for us to sink our teeth into. So.
So, Anthony, I think we were thinking about after things settle down in Springfield and we've got an adopted budget, we sit down and have a meeting in September, I think, and really kind of go through some things then. If you think we have to have one sooner, just let us know.
Excellent. Thank you.
And that, the committee, the Finance Committee, Dr. Thompson, that's an open meeting?
Yeah, all these board committee meetings are open, yes.
Okay, great. The Equity Committee, Mr. Khan?
Yeah, so since last time we met, since the committee was formed, we went ahead and, along with a lot of board members, visited a number of schools, tailoring our discussions with the principals, primarily with some of the purposes of the Equity Committee in mind. I thought it was very, very enlightening and helpful to have these meetings with the principals. First, I mean, there's more work to be done for sure. We've met just, with a number of the schools, but not all of them, and we kind of project that the next steps will be meeting with administrators, and then even digging down a little bit further and deeper to the teachers and the staff members as well, to get a good picture of what's going on in the various schools. I think that from my perspective, I found that the principals were nothing short of amazing, hearing what the type of knowledge that they have and the type of perspective. And I really feel one thing that was enlightening to me, and maybe some of the other of the board members, was just that I find that our principals are kind of dedicated to use the resources that they have with them. It's almost, so they're really dedicated to use the resource they have with them to solve whatever issues they have in the school. It takes a lot to get them to ask for what is this issue, what is that issue, which is commendable. And we know that we have people in place that are looking to work with what they have and do a good job. There's been a lot of success with some programs or some interesting things with partnering with businesses and partnering with different social services. I think there's more work to be done. A lot of interesting ideas. We're not finalizing any, I guess, so until we come up with recommendations, just know that we're investigating a lot, and there'll be more investigation. I think we'll hopefully come up with some great recommendations as time goes on.
And are you thinking about convening a meeting in maybe September as well? The board retreat is on the 13th of July. We may have an equity goal that surfaces from that, but...
Exactly, yeah, that might be, that would be a good idea. I know that when we have these retreats, we have some great goals that come from, that we discuss, and these discussions will certainly color, what we do in the retreat. I mean, there's just a lot of different potential things that can be done to fulfill the goals of the equity committee.
So we'll convene as soon as you think it's appropriate. I think, we could target September, but if we need to meet sooner, we can.
Fantastic. Okay.
Zubair, were you thinking to, I know your intention was that we hit every school.
Yes, I think, and I think that was, we were right at the end there, we were visiting schools where literally on our last day or last couple of days, so there's definitely, I want to hit up the rest of the schools, so we have an idea. I think we prioritize some schools, and then I definitely want to meet with all the rest of the schools in short order, but the planning of that, maybe a little bit of, we'll take a little bit more planning since the schools are shut now, but I think we hit the priority schools though, which was good.
Great. Excellent. The Superintendent's Communication Committee.
So we have our Chief Communication Officer starting in July, and Dr. Barbini and I had met with her and kind of laid out what we hoped that she would accomplish as her priorities in her first 90 days or so. One of those is to evaluate how well we're using our social media and try to improve that. We'd like her to have a little listening tour where she goes out and meets all the principals, all the administrators in the district. Maybe she meets with board members. But she just tries to get a sense of what's good about the district, what does she need to know about the district in order to move forward. And the third thing is for her to create a strategic plan for the department. And so we'd like to give her about 90 days to do that. And after she drafts a strategic plan, I'd like to convene this committee then to review the plan, add to it, change it, eliminate some things we don't think are necessary, but then to really have kind of a formalized plan. And so I'm anticipating that the Superintendent's Communication Committee would meet in September as well.
Okay, great. The last item on the for board discussion, I am interested in having someone benchmark the manner in which each of our different schools handles food-based allergies, and that would be in lunchrooms, how we make sure that we keep children safe in the lunchroom, but at the same time as ensuring safety, also ensuring inclusivity, so that we don't have a situation where you've got children that are safe, but they're excluded from the the happenings and the fun that happened in the lunchroom. But part of that is the lunchroom, but part of that is also in classrooms. We know that we have snacks in classrooms and other things that happen in the classroom that are also food-based, although minimized with some of the things that we've put in place over the last 5 or 6 years that still is present. But across the district, I've heard some really good things. I've had the pleasure of being at a few schools with Zubair, and there have been some things that we've been told that have been very positive and proactive, and then there are some schools that flounder a little bit with the way they do things. So would anybody like to comment, or?
I'm new here, so I was kind of wondering, do we have a standard district policy on how we handle food allergies in cafeterias?
We have, yes, we have a handbook on food allergies, right, Sue? And guidelines that guide individual schools. I will say that each school has some uniqueness to it, the number of students, the kinds of students, the physical makeup of the buildings. So each school has guidelines, but they implement them differently.
Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense, yeah. It would be interesting to know how they, like, so I think what you're alluding to is that each school would give us kind of a rundown of how they handle it, and then we kind of could look at all of them and then make some observations and see if anything, stands out that should be addressed.
Actually, you know what, I'm thinking a little more positively, Frank, where I'm thinking, as you take a look across all of the schools in our district, that there have got to be some schools that just do it fantastically, and it works really well, and we can get that, benchmark impact information back. And then schools that are struggling or that know that they aren't doing it as well as they could be would benefit from the ideas that are coming from schools that are really doing it well.
Okay.
And I think it's important, part of that, every school is different. The level of allergies are different. The parents are different. You're going to have different input that's going to be coming from the students and the parents, I would anticipate also. So some level of benchmarking, but then also input from the staff at the school as to what parents' expectations are, how they hit those expectations, and if they're successful.
So whose roles and responsibilities does that fall under?
Which rules and responsibilities, Frank?
The handling, the policy for how they handle allergies in schools. Is that something the principals handle?
Well,
is it something
we've developed at the district level the guidelines, and then we allow the principals and the assistant principals, the cafeteria workers, the parents, the kids to determine how they're going to implement that in the building. So those are really building-based.
So in order to pull them all together so we could start the process, where would we start?
So Lisa suggested that we investigate how each school is handling them now, and then from the way the schools are handling them, there might be a way that we can have a benchmark model. These are the components that are the best things that schools can do. Maybe there's not one school that does them all. Maybe one school does one thing really well and another school does another thing really well. So she's suggesting that the board agree that we will go back and examine what's happening now and then bring that back to you, show it to you, and then maybe we'll have some recommendations based upon that investigation.
Sure. So we just need to pick somebody, I guess you're saying, from the administration who would actually be the one driving.
Yeah, I'll do that, but we...
Yeah. So I didn't know if it fell under somebody's job description already that they kind of handle it.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely in one particular area in our administration, but we'll share that with all the principals because they're the ones that have implemented in the buildings. But typically, when a board member makes a request, the rest of the board has to endorse that before we do something, just so that we're not. One board member calls us and asks us to do something, and the other board member says, wait, I don't want you to do that. So that's why she's asking tonight, and I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
My only comment would be that I don't see a reason why we would limit this to the one-term procedures versus sort of getting a broad look at variations from the guidelines across a number of spectrums. We just, as we went through the disciplinary guidelines and the bullying procedures and the implementation of the expect, respect, and PBIS program, it seems like there was some variation identified there that the recommendation is for consistency. So if the guidelines are intended to be broadly enforced and then or broadly adhered to, and there's reasons for variation, totally appropriate, but I think if we could capture sort of the range of variation, and I don't know if we need to, at the offsite next month or some other place, sort of categorize the different processes we're talking about, whether, you know, because I don't know how many more that would extend to beyond lunchroom, bullying, maybe some stuff around transportation. There's a few other areas. It seems like we should look at those collectively rather than as a one-off.
So Dave, you're saying create a benchmark list, basically. These are the different topics that we'd like to benchmark across the district.
How broad that the district guidelines are, that if the administration is, and Dr. Thompson, maybe you can sort of enlighten us on how wide a range of topics that hits, because, you know, the educational components are going to be the majority of things. So how many of these other areas are there guidelines around?
Yeah, I can get that information for you. The ones referenced tonight were just food allergies or allergy guidelines.
The guidelines that are in place are considered life-threatening food allergy guidelines, and they were implemented at the state level, and that was sent then to the various school districts. And this particular district implemented the guidelines as presented by the state of Illinois. So that does cover a variety of environments: the classroom, the cafeteria, transportation, field trips. Then it also breaks it down into categories of responsibility, whether it's the principal or the classroom teacher or the school nurse, et cetera. So there are some structures in place that we can create benchmarks from.
Okay.
So I sense that the board is with Lisa, and we will work on this.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. All right, next on the agenda, citizens address the board. We will now open our meeting for public comment. Please remember that this is not a dialogue between you and the board. If you have a specific issue which requires a response, Superintendent Thompson will get back to you. Please state your name and identify any group that you represent. Please limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes. If someone previously has articulated something with which you agree, please state that you agree rather than reiterating the entire comment. Finally, avoid comments specific to any person, student, or staff member, respecting the right to privacy. This is not the forum to comment on personnel issues. The first person is Mr. Dave Barnett.
Just have a seat by the microphone, Mr. Barnett.
Thank you, I will. Dr. Thompson, President Chupai, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to the board this evening. And most importantly, thank you for your consideration and discussion around the management of food allergies in schools. As you noted, my name is Dave Barnett. I grew up in District 15 and attended numerous District 15 schools and have two sons that are proud Hunting Ridge Hawks. My youngest son, Alex, suffers from life-threatening food allergies to milk, peanut, and tree nuts. And in case you're not aware, 1 in 13 children today is plagued with dealing with food allergies. And if you look at that, that's a significant number of kids. With over 6 million U.S. children suffering from food allergies today, that's 1 million more kids than we would need to fill every professional sports stadium in the country, when you look at that just from a sheer numbers perspective. And what's frightening is at the same time we see these large numbers, the incidence is going up. And unfortunately, quality of life metrics for children and families dealing with food allergies are trending downward, as evidenced by numerous studies quite recently out of Mount Sinai, showing that a health-related quality of life index trends downward due to social pressure and social anxiety related to food allergies and bullying that is becoming more and more prevalent. Within a recent study, 31% of students who live with food allergies experiencing bullying in the school environment. And while it's not traditionally looked at as bullying, one of the most frequent individuals cited for bullying were teachers. Not in the traditional sense, but in the sense of explaining to children in the class that we can't participate in X activity because of Tommy's allergies. Or we can't do this field trip, or have this party, or have food at our party this year because Billy might get sick. And that separateness, that setting those children aside and creating an environment that's not inclusive, has been shown as a primary driver of young childhood bullying. Often what starts as curiosity about why someone is different leads to difficult conversations and challenges for children with food allergies. So, as a food allergy parent, the question becomes, so what do you want? And people will look at me and say, I get it. It's terrible. It's difficult. But what is it that you want from us? I think it's simple. What we want is an environment that's safe and inclusive for our children to learn. Put simply, that's all. Unfortunately, at times, safe and inclusive feel like they're at odds. Our solution is to say, well, then that child can't go on that field trip, or that child shouldn't attend the party. Or you know what, we'll sit them over here because it's away. While that might drive safety, that takes away that inclusiveness and just exacerbates social anxiety and makes that child feel even more different. Things like Halloween parties where we fight to have the cupcake, or we have to put candy hearts on a spoon and have a relay race, or classroom curriculum that involves food such as molasses tasting, or shaking and churning butter in the classroom. Field trips that happen every year to places like the Long Grove Confectionery, or projects where we make cakes in the shape of states to build the U.S. They're wonderful, they're creative, they're engaged learning, and I applaud that. But for a large population of our children, they're life-threatening, and take what could otherwise be a safe environment and make it something very scary. Things in our lunchroom, like our current practice of serving peanut butter and jelly as a daily option to our students, as either a lunch option or a breakfast option, creates a risk for students that may not be necessary. Do I worry that my son will run over and grab a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, rip the bag open, and cram it in his face? Of course not. But do I worry that his best friend will eat one of those sandwiches and leave the cafeteria without washing his hands, because that's just not part of our daily schedule, and smear peanut butter on him inadvertently or leave it on the playground, creating a life-threatening allergic reaction? Absolutely I do. Or our protein power packs that are filled with tree nuts is an option to get students protein. Again, what other options lie before us that aren't one of the top 8 major allergens to which we can meet school lunch guidelines and get our children's sustenance? Things like club meetings or teacher meetings that happen in classrooms, where we eat lunch on a student's desk and we don't take time to wipe down desks after that. Can we restrict those meetings to places that aren't classrooms? And we could go on and on. But I implore you to look at additional ways that we can create safe environments that allow our children to come to school and focus on learning, not on whether the next room to which they transition will be safe for them. And so they don't have to worry about being singled out or left out of an activity because of something they have absolutely no control over. As allergy parents, we work hard. We volunteer, we coach, we lead clubs, we attend every birthday party and play date. We call ahead everywhere we go, just to ensure that our kids have a safe environment. We don't do it because it's a burden, we do it because we love our kids. And it's simply the cards we've been dealt. But we can't do it alone. 5 days a week, we leave our children in your care. And through no fault of yours, that is a wildly frightening experience for us every time they leave the door to go to school. Not because we don't trust anyone's intent, but because we know everyone's not thinking about the things we do every single day. As I think about the things I ask of you, I would say there's 5 things that can be really meaningful. And first and foremost, President Chupai goes to the point that you talked about looking at our practices and put together a parent advisory committee. There's so many of us in district who absolutely understand this stuff. We live it, we know what to look out for, and we would be honored and privileged to give our time to the district to help form practices and protocols that can help keep our children safe in partnership with the district, which we've all been doing to date with our principals and assistant principals. The second is to further promote education. We know those things that feel different and scary become very normal when we just have productive dialogue. Look for ways to further educate teachers that go beyond online learning modules or go beyond the rote mechanical training that we put into orientation and actually bring in families to have dialogue. Here's what it looks like, here's what the impacts are, here's why this really does get in the way of learning. Third, educate students. Help students understand how they can be a pal and keep their friends safe, and be a partner in their friends' safety in a way that can promote this as a school-wide initiative, where we don't view these folks as boat anchors that pull the school down, but instead we herald them and support them. Fourth, keep food out of classrooms, period. I've never seen anything that indicates there's a direct correlation between ability to learn and the ability to eat or have candy or cupcakes or cookies. Keep food out of classrooms. Of course we eat at school, and the cafeteria is a great place to do that. And finally, look at our cafeteria protocols. Ask questions about how can we keep students even safer. I know for a fact in the school that we come from, and again, despite everyone's best efforts, allergy tables are used as overflow at times. and students who have nut lunches may eat at an allergy table. First graders wipe down with communal sponges food allergy tables, and we're relying on a first grader to ensure we have a safe and sanitized surface for a child with food allergies to eat upon after it's been cleaned. We serve peanut butter and jelly, and the same individuals that are handing out hot lunch packets are handing out those peanut butter and jellies. Yes, they're sealed, absolutely, but do those never break open? So it's a simple audit to look at our practices to ensure that we're doing things that will truly keep these kids safe. In closing, I just want to share with you a couple of faces of children who have food allergies in the district. This is Connor, who's entering kindergarten this year. And Sean, who's entering first grade. And that's my son Alex, who'll be in first grade this year. This is Christina, a first grader in the district as well. And finally, Aiden, who's entering 8th grade. These are the little faces that cope with daily anxiety, fear, and uncertainty of food allergies. They aren't statistics. They aren't 504 plans. They're vibrant, energetic children with loving families. They contribute each day to making our communities great. My son has experienced anaphylaxis. And it's something I hope no one ever experiences, and I certainly don't care to experience again. Simple things we take for granted, simple foods, are as scary and threatening to these children as rat poison might be to you or me. I ask each of you to consider simple actions we can take to create a safe and inclusive environment. Is that peanut butter and jelly or Halloween cupcake really worth a child's life? Is it worth their anxiety, their fear, or the isolation it can create for Alex or Sean or Aiden? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Next up, Len Green.
Good evening, all. Just a few points, I think a combination of some comments and questions on what I heard this evening. First of all, during the course of Mike Adamczyk's discussion about the financials, the budget, and the uncertainty about the state funding a budget being passed this year and whether the auditors would permit income to be accrued, I guess first of all, an observation. I think clearly in terms of the way we look at budgets and finances and cash flow, there's a difference between the timing or the delay in receipt of funds on the one side, and on the other side, a complete cutback or absence. The money is not coming, not now, not ever. So I think that frames the way we should be making decisions about financing. Secondly, the position adopted by the external auditors, I'd be curious to understand as to whether that is being commonly implemented or positioned by all the accounting firms in Illinois that do school district audits, and even more importantly, perhaps across all state agencies that have auditors. Because I'd like to not see District 15 being subjected to an audit standard which is out of line with other practices. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you. Secondly, just an observation, the PTAC presentation on restorative and behavior techniques to deal with kids, being able to educate. I guess I really just have a question on this. Has the committee contemplated, or is it implicit is it clear in some of the documentation and the training and the approach to dealing with these situations? Does it include a reminder that every single student, I believe, has a right to education, and therefore we talked about, I think substantial impairments of a kid's learning experience? I think I welcome something there that I think we as a community should say every kid, including the misbehaving kid, has a right to an education, but people should understand that if you impinge upon that right in a more and more severe degree, that should be problematic. The parents of kids on both sides should understand that. I don't think it's often enough in the past. I think the misbehaving kids may have got away with things, and the parents who are dealing with the victimized kid aren't perhaps thinking that, hey, my kid's right to actually go to school and have a safe environment is there. Thanks. Anyway, on that, back to money again. I'm an accountant, sorry. One of the things it's a pet topic of mine frequently because it's addressed in the media this way as well. We get statements like this: "Oh, that agency didn't get its state or federal funding," as if the state or the federal source of funds is some magical grandfather's trust that benevolently puts money into another agency's thing. It really should be federal taxpayer funding and state taxpayer funding, because neither the federal government nor the state government get money from any other source other than we the people. So it's just, which pocket does it come out of? Our property tax pocket, our income tax pocket, our sales tax pocket. I would like to see recognition that it is, in the end, as public bodies, they are funded by various communities of taxpayers.
A minute and a half, Len.
Thank you. All right. Finally, on the policy discussion document in the board packet tonight, there's a topic, I think there's a proposed policy dealing with Board of Education member qualifications. I'd like the board to consider one of the criterion for qualification, or maybe a reason for disqualification, would be any member, any person who runs for office or currently holds the office would be disqualified if they are bankrupt or if they are tax delinquent. I think people who are in that kind of situation for whatever reason, it's incompatible with their role as trustees of on the board to be making fiscal decisions for taxpayers. And that I think should be something that we as a community should welcome, as making certain that we have a solid board in place. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Brent Larson.
Hello, my name is Brent Larson. I wasn't really planning on talking tonight. I was planning on coming back in August to do it, but with the PTAC discussion, I have a big concern with how the district is handling the bullying situation within the elementary schools. It's been a problem this year, specifically for me, but for other parents who I've talked to. I'm organizing a little group to talk about it outside of the district meeting. I think it's a topic that needs more than just one meeting a year to go over and review with how things are going. I think that what gets forgotten a lot of times in the policies and in the legal laws of the state is how the victims are treated at schools. A lot of times they don't know what the punishments are. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand what's being taken care of. What you hear from them is, you hear a lot of times that I get the same punishment as the kid who's been bullying me. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And they hold it inside. And what that does is it creates two classes of kids. You got the kids who are the victims, or the people who are being bullied and have tried to do the right thing, tried to follow the policies of the school board and policies of the school district around reporting it, talking to the administration, and they think they're going to get in trouble now. So now they stop reporting it. And no fourth grader or fifth grader is going to go online and anonymously report it. They just don't think like that. And when you have that situation happen, and it builds up all year, and over and over and over again, it doesn't help the situation at all. The restorative process that you talked about, that's good in theory. I don't think it actually works at all, because the same kids who do the problems do them over and over and over and repeatable, and they sit there and they get the exact same staying at recess once, and that's the problem with the kid that they were bullying. So it just causes inequity. You don't get the reporting. The other thing that we as parents don't ever see is how many incidents have been reported at schools, how many incidents have been addressed at different schools. We have no exposure to any of that information. I'm glad you moved the information on the website up, because that's another, it was kind of hidden on your district website. So moving that forward was really a good thing. But there are a lot of parents who have children who are being bullied at school, who don't think it's being handled well at all in District 15. And I'm going to work with them over the next coming months to put some more definition around things and be a little more prepared to come talk to you again at the next meetings. But it's just an issue that I think gets ignored. We talk about a lot about the punishments for the kids who are doing it, but never really think about the kids who are being impacted by what's happening at the schools. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Jessica Weir.
Hello, good evening. I'm Jessica Weir. I'm actually a product of District 15 as well as 211, and so is my husband. And we loved it so much that we came back here, we moved, and we're excited, and our kids are entering into District 15 now. The concern that I have, that I just wanted to ask for, I guess, a plea of consideration, is to reevaluate the district boundaries and lines. I keep hearing about, especially through just all of the information that we're inundated with, all of this school has an overpopulation problem, but this school has open classrooms over here, and I just kind of wonder why. And so, as an educator myself, I'm kind of asking you guys to consider the why, and to just look at redrawing some of those district lines, so that way maybe there's a little bit more of a proportionate spread of our population amongst the elementary schools. Because I got to tell you, if one of my kids was in one of those trailers, I would lose it. Just the not safe portion of it really, really concerns me. So it's something that I've kind of been waiting to hear if this board was going to kind of address that as one of their concerns. And I'm not saying food allergies aren't important. I definitely agree with all of that. I just kind of wonder, when is that going to be addressed as well? So that's kind of my plea, short and sweet. I didn't think I was going to come up tonight either, and as I was sitting here, I'm like, this is bothering me. So as somebody who's representing our district, I wanted to bring that to your attention. That's all I got. Have a great night.
Lisa Lucht.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Lisa Lucht. I was going to talk a little bit about what Jess Weir just talked about as well, in just continuing to move forward with the district, so I completely agree with what she's saying. But one thing that I also wanted to touch on was the Community Engagement Committee and their presentation last month. The top item that was the main concern of all of the English-speaking parents that filled out that survey was full-day kindergarten. Since that was shut down in the last referendum, I'm wondering how we are going to figure out some way to include that in our curriculum for our younger students, so that we can provide that in some way, shape, or form. So I would just like you to continue trying to make an attempt to fill that in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda will be action items. Commencing with item 17-620, the personnel report. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the June 14th, 2017 personnel report as presented, including the following recommendations. Recommendation for the termination of Novia Blasky, recommendation for the termination of Thomas McGuinn, recommendation for the termination of Tracy Saipura.
Second?
I second.
Any discussion? No? Roll call, please.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Chupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Canarino?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-621, the ratification of therapists in education union TIE contract. May I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the ratification of therapists in education union TIE contract 2016 through 2020 as recommended.
Second. I second. Any discussion?
I just wanted to let the board and the community know that this bargaining unit has got 10 members. Negotiations began in June of 2016. They lasted a year. The agreement was ratified by their membership on May 26th. The increase in salaries is based upon their base salary amount, and it averages about 1.5% to 2% over the course of the life of the 4-year contract. I wanted to say that I think it's a fair, equitable contract, keeps things within the realm of our financial standing, but it also treats, I think, these individuals with respect and helps them move forward. I want to thank Mike Adamczyk and Lisa Nuss for their efforts to get this contract before you in its final form tonight.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call.
Kane? Aye. Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-622, renewal Illinois Association of School Boards annual dues. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the renewal of the district's membership in the Illinois Association of School Boards and the payment of annual dues in the amount of $15,998 as recommended.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye. Motion carries. Item 17-623, a bid award for the summer life safety projects.
I make a motion to award the contract for the curtain wall replacement for the 2017 Summer Life Safety Bid Release 2-17-005-BR2 curtain wall rebid Frank C. Whiteley School to Alliance Glazing, Romeoville, Illinois, for a total bid amount of $1,309,600 as recommended.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-624, a bid award for a global positioning system, vehicle tracking system. Motion, please.
I make a motion to award the contract for the Global Positioning System Vehicle Tracking System bid 17-022 to Tyler Technologies of Latham, New York for a 3-year contract. Year 1 will be at a cost of $89,333. Year 2 at a cost of $46,928. And year 3 at a cost of $48,805. The total cost of the district over the 3-year period would be $185,066. This recommendation is based on low bid vendor meeting bid specifications.
Second?
A second.
Discussion? I have one question on this, and I know you mentioned, Dr. Thompson, that the point of this is to get to what we were looking for when the original GPS system was put in with the student tracker.
Right.
That didn't ever function in the way that
No,
it was
it
talked
wasn't
about at the
reliable
time.
in every situation, and so parents could rely on it.
Right. And are we 100% positive that?
We are confident that it's going to work appropriately and be useful this coming school year.
Okay. And how about access? Is it, I remember the access being website access in the past.
It's
Is it-
online. It should be an online access that people can access that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-625, bid award for further processed USDA commodity foods and commercial equivalents. May I have a motion?
I make a motion to award the contract for the further processed USDA commodity foods and commercial equivalents bid 17-023 as recommended to the following 3 vendors. Performance, Fox River Foods, Montgomery, Illinois, for a total of $69,319.15. Cole Warehouse, Quincy, Illinois, for $383,500. $590.35. And Gordon Food Service, Grand Rapids, Michigan, $13,047.95. Total bid award amount, $465,957.45.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Wong.
Aye.
Iannarino.
Aye.
Border.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Khan.
Aye.
Smolka.
Aye.
Shupai.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 17-626, bid award for cafeteria packaging supplies. Motion, please.
Make a motion to award the contract for the cafeteria packaging supplies bid 17-025 as recommended to the following two vendors: Edward Don of Woodridge, Illinois, in the amount of $38,484.00, and Webco Packaging Incorporated of Fort Wayne, Indiana, for $29,903.15, for a total bid award amount of $63,387.15.
Second?
A second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Iannarino.
Aye.
Border.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Khan.
Aye.
Smolka.
Aye.
Shupai.
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-627, a bid award for custodial cleaning equipment. Motion, please.
I make a motion to award the contract for the custodial cleaning equipment bid 17-026 as recommended to the following two vendors: Supply Works, Lombard, Illinois, $42,512.76, and Warehouse Direct, Des Plaines, Illinois, $33,084.10, for a total bid award amount of $75,596.86. Recommendations are based on low bid vendors meeting bid specifications.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call?
Border.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Khan.
Aye.
Smolka.
Aye.
Shupai.
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Iannarino.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 17-628, bid award for visitor management system.
I make a motion to award the contract for the visitor management system, bid 17-027, to Raptor Technologies of Houston, Texas, for a total amount of $33,000, as recommended. It was noted that while not the lowest bidder, Raptor Technologies had superior technical support and other features compared to the two lowest bidders.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
I just wanted to make a comment about this. I know that we had a brief discussion, and I think this is something maybe possibly valuable to put, so that everyone can see it if they decide to tune in or if they're in person, how the system works, so that it has to do with our students' safety, and I think it's kind of important that we kind of discuss and let the public know what it is.
So we wanted to improve the safety of visitors coming into school, and one of the ways we thought we could do that, the safety committee looked into it, and they thought that we should have really a system that checks who's coming into our school systems. And so they, Lisa and Mike Adamczyk and the committee looked at a various group of systems that would take a person's identification and check to see if they are really someone that we should be letting into school or not. So this particular system I used in my previous district. It's called Raptor. You have to present your photo ID or your driver's license when you enter the school. It's scanned, and then it's checked against some databases nationally to see if the person has committed any crime or shouldn't be in the school. And once a person is approved, it prints up a badge with that person's picture on it, and then that person can walk around the school with a visitor's badge with their photo on there. It also allows us, when we have lots of people coming to a school, it allows us to print up those people that have been previously approved. It checks them instantly, but then it prints up their name badges so that we don't have 150 parents standing at the door waiting to go have their driver's license scanned. They've already had that done once. They don't have to do it again. So I think this is going to really improve the safety. The last time that I had this in a previous district, there were a few cases where people were trying to get to school that shouldn't have been in there when the police were called and they were taken away in handcuffs. So it just adds another little bit of security and safety for our kids, and I think it's a good use of money. you should know that when we bid items out, if it's identical items and there's no difference in the product, then we have to take the lowest bid. But when these are unique kinds of devices, and they each have their own specificity, and particularly the service that this company gives and the ability to do the mass printing, we didn't have to take the lowest bidder in this case. But thanks, good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-629, bid award for classroom furniture. Motion, please.
I make a motion to award the contract for the classroom furniture bid 17-028 as recommended to the following 4 vendors: Lowry, Wooddale, Illinois, $5,046.21. Verco, Conway, Arkansas, $26,037.88. Staples, Business Advantage, Lombard, Illinois, $14,823.79. Quill, Lincolnshire, Illinois, $1,823.90. Total bid award amount $47,731.78. Award recommendation was based on low bidder meeting bid specifications.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-630, bid award for playground equipment and installation. Motion, please.
I make a motion to award the contract for the playground equipment and installation bid 17-029 to Team Wheel of Union, Illinois, for a total amount of $96,725 as recommended. The total amount is for one playground until installed for $60,365 and 12 new basketball hoops installed for $36,360. The recommendation was based on low bid vendor meeting bid specifications.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
So this is a part of our ongoing scheduled replacement of old and outdated playground equipment. We were going to try to do one a year. Craig's created that list based upon the greatest need. Lake Louise, I think, was the school that is the one that's in greatest need. So we were doing this on a regular basis just to make sure the equipment is safe for kids, as well as that's the same thing. Same thing's true for the basketball hoops.
Great. Roll call?
Smolka?
Aye.
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17-631, request for quotation award for pilot touchscreen Chromebooks. Motion?
I make a motion to award the contract for the pilot touchscreen Chromebooks bid to Riverside Technology, Inc., North Sioux City, South Dakota, for the purchase of 180 Lenovo N23 Yoga touchscreen Chromebooks and licensure for a total amount of $45,450 as recommended.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Shupai?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Iannarino?
Aye.
Border?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Smolka?
Aye.
Motion carries. And finally, the item 17-632, the consent calendar. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent calendar?
I had one question about the item O, which was the approval to pay certain invoices prior to board approval upon certification of the superintendent designee. I was wondering, who is the designee and how is that determined?
So why don't we pull it off the consent agenda? We can vote on it separately.
Sure.
Perfect. Okay, so then do we motion to approve the consent calendar exclusive of O?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented with the exception of item letter O, the resolution to approval to pay certain invoices prior to board approval upon certification of the superintendent designee.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No discussion.
No discussion, sorry. Roll call.
Wong,
Aye.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Border,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Smolka,
Aye.
Shupai.
Aye. Motion carries.
So the letter O item is references when there are invoices that come in that have to get paid, particularly like now, we don't have another board meeting until August, and we can't wait until August for invoices to be paid because we don't want our suppliers and other people not to get paid. So this allows me or Mike to pay those invoices, and then we'll bring them to you for your approval in August. That's basically what's happening.
So, what is our payment terms generally? Is it net 30? We have standard payment terms, or is it just all based upon what the suppliers are requesting?
It's under the Prompt Payment Act, we have 90 days to pay an invoice, but some of our bills, like utility payments, we can't wait. Healthcare payments, we're self-funded on healthcare. Workers' compensation, we're self-funded on that. So there's a lot of payments, even though we're under the Illinois Prompt Payment Act, we have to pay those within a 30-day time period. So it varies by vendor, but as Dr. Thomas said, the main reason is because we don't have a board meeting in July.
And correct me if it's different in this district, but to make you feel better, working in a school district, I'll say to pay anyone, there are probably minimum 3 or 4 levels of approval, and so it's not just simply one person asking for a check to be signed and it being delivered. It's checked, there's checks and balances by probably 3 or 4 people minimum before it ever gets cut and sent somewhere.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So may I have a motion to approve item O on the consent calendar, please?
I make a motion to approve to pay certain invoices prior to board approval upon certification of the superintendent designee.
A second.
All right.
We had the discussion.
Further discussion? No discussion. Roll call, please.
Iannarino,
Aye.
Border,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Smolka,
Aye.
Shupai,
Aye.
Wong.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 9, Dr. Thompson?
There were 6 requests and/or responses for information under the Freedom of Information Act during the period of May 5th through June 7th. On April 21st, a request was received from Len Green, Palatine, Illinois. An extension notice was sent on April 28th. The response to this request is sent on May 5th. On April 7th and April 23rd, a request was received from Jean Taylor Benker, Rolling Meadows, Illinois. An extension notice and request for further clarification was sent on May 1st. The response to this request was sent on May 8th. On May 3rd, a request was received from Matthew Gagala, Workforce Development, Carroll Stream, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on May 10th. On May 4th, a request was received from Jason Bittner, Cloverleaf Farms, Crestwood, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on May 10th. On May 26th, the request was received from Janie Jordan, Data Research Partners, LLC, Las Vegas, Nevada. The requester was advised that commercial requests are allowed 21 days response time. The response to this request is pending. On June 7th, a request was received from Michael Wee, Hoffman Estates, Illinois. The response to this request is pending. We received 1 check from the City of Rolling Meadows for impact fees from a developer in the amount of $958.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.